The first time Elena Turner met Jonathan Hayes, she had no idea how much of her life would unravel because of him. She was 23, fresh out of college, working 2 part-time jobs to support her younger brother after their parents had passed. Her world was small, predictable, and precarious. Every paycheck, every shift, every late-night walk home was calculated. Stability was a luxury, but survival was an art she had mastered. Jonathan Hayes, on the other hand, seemed to inhabit a different universe altogether. Billionaire entrepreneur, philanthropist, media darling. His name appeared in magazines. His deals were analyzed in financial journals. His face smiled down from billboards promoting luxury real estate or charitable foundations. To Elena, he was untouchable. A figure belonging to a world where sacrifices were measured in millions, not minutes and dollars. Their first encounter was accidental. She was running late for her night shift at the diner, juggling a tray of coffee cups and a to-go box of sandwiches when she collided with him outside the building. Jonathan's coffee tumbled, and the lid bounced across the sidewalk. Elena froze, mortified. I'm so sorry," she exclaimed, bending to retrieve it. He looked at her, amused more than irritated. "It's okay. Really." His voice was calm, reassuring. "I don't mind a little rain or spilled coffee." She handed him a napkin, cheeks flushed. I didn't see you." "That's okay," he said again, smiling. "Accidents happen." There was something in the way he spoke that didn't feel like the arrogance she expected from someone like him. Elena felt a strange pang of curiosity, though she quickly dismissed it. People like him didn't notice people like her. Over the next few weeks, they ran into each other multiple times, sometimes at the diner where she worked, sometimes at the local grocery store. Jonathan seemed interested in the mundane, the little things like the way she insisted on giving exact change to a child buying candy, or how she carried her groceries carefully up the apartment stairs. Elena couldn't explain why, but she began noticing him too. The way he treated the staff respectfully, not condescendingly. The way he paused to smile at children, to hold doors, to listen. One evening, after closing the diner, he asked if she wanted coffee. She hesitated. Her life was too full, too chaotic, too responsible for a distraction. But curiosity and the unspoken pull between them won. "Sure," she said quietly. Sitting across from him in the small cafe, Elena felt a mix of excitement and caution. "You're different from what I expected," she admitted. Jonathan raised an eyebrow. "Different?" "Yeah," she said. "I thought people like you don't notice people like me." He smiled softly. "People like me often miss the details, yes, but I've learned the world is full of extraordinary people in ordinary lives. You notice, you act, you care, that matters." Elena felt warmth rush through her chest. No one had ever said that about her before, not in words she believed. Months passed. Jonathan's presence became a constant in her life, not intrusive but there, always observing, occasionally offering small kindnesses, and Elena, careful, cautious, responsible Elena, began to let him in. She started sacrificing things she once held sacred. Nights with friends became dinners with him. Time for her brother became time juggling him and Jonathan. Savings she had painstakingly built began going toward experiences he suggested. Concert tickets, weekend trips, small gifts. Every sacrifice was justified in her mind by a single thought. He notices me. He cares. He's different. Then came the pivotal moment. Jonathan asked her to move in with him. Not as a guest, not as an employee or a casual presence. He wanted her there, permanently, part of his carefully constructed world. Elena hesitated. She had worked so hard to maintain her independence. But she wanted this, wanted him. So she agreed. The apartment was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows, city lights that sparkled like stars, furniture imported from distant countries. But Elena's heart tightened. She had given up so much to be here, yet a quiet part of her wondered, Do I belong? Jonathan, she thought, seemed to fit perfectly, confident, assured, commanding, but never overbearing. He had never demanded she change who she was. That alone had kept her from noticing the subtle pressures around her. Weeks in, Elena noticed patterns. Jonathan would call her out on little things, her choices in decor, the way she spent money, even how she organized the kitchen. Always framed as advice, never criticism. But the effect was cumulative. She sacrificed more subconsciously to meet the standards he set. Nights she once spent with her brother, she now spent planning dinners to suit his taste. Meals she had once cooked for herself, she now adjusted to accommodate him. Her world had shrunk to fit his, and she told herself constantly, "It's worth it. He's worth it." One evening, after a dinner she had cooked herself, painstakingly following his preferences, she finally asked, "Jonathan, do you notice what I've done for you? The time, the energy, the sacrifices?" He smiled, warm but distant. "Of course I notice. But it's natural, Elena. You care. That's what people do for those they love." She froze. Something in his tone, gentle as it was, made a cold knot form in her stomach. That's it, she thought. All of this, every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every piece of my world given up. And it's just expected? She didn't speak further that night, but a seed of doubt had been planted. The next morning she watched him leave for work, perfectly dressed, perfectly confident, unaware of the turmoil brewing inside her. And for the first time, Elena Turner realized she had given everything, and she wasn't sure if it had mattered in the way she imagined. The thought haunted her. As she walked to the grocery store, her reflection in the shop windows distorted and strange. Did he really see me? Or did he just see what he wanted me to be? Her heart tightened. The sacrifices, the compromises, the love she had poured into this life. They were her choice, yes, but was she simply feeding an illusion he hadn't truly acknowledged? Elena didn't have the answer yet, but she knew one thing: she needed to understand what he truly thought of her. The morning after her uneasy realization, Elena woke before the sun. The apartment quiet, except for the hum of the city outside. The thought of Jonathan's words, "It's natural, you care, that's what people do," replayed in her mind, echoing like a ghost she couldn't shake. She brewed her coffee in silence, her hands trembling slightly. She had spent months shaping her life around him, sacrificing late-night shifts at the diner, cutting back on her brother's needs so she could focus on his world, adjusting every detail of herself to suit him. And now, his words made her feel invisible. Invisible. That's the word, she thought, gripping the mug tightly. That day she threw herself into routine, errands, trying to shake the unsettling feeling. But everything reminded her of Jonathan, his favorite grocery brands, the corner bench where he had once insisted she rest her feet, the cafe where they shared quiet mornings. She began noticing the subtle patterns she had ignored before. How he praised her with vague terms rather than specifics. How his compliments were carefully measured, never acknowledging the effort behind the actions. How he appreciated results, but never the sacrifices themselves. By evening, Elena felt a growing tension. At dinner that night she prepared his favorite meal, a meticulously timed roast with sides she had learned he preferred. Jonathan arrived later than usual, suit perfectly pressed, hair immaculate. He kissed her on the cheek, smiling. "Smells amazing," he said casually. Elena nodded, forcing a smile. "I made it just the way you like it." He tasted the food, murmured approval. "Perfect, as always." Her stomach twisted. Perfect. That single word weighed heavier than any criticism. It acknowledged the outcome, but never the effort. "Jonathan," she began cautiously, Do you ever notice how much I do for you? How much I give?" He looked up, expression neutral, as if surprised by the question. "Of course. But it doesn't matter how much you give. I care about you. You care. That's enough. Elena's chest tightened. Enough? Yes, he said smoothly. Love isn't measured in tasks or sacrifices. You're making this more complicated than it needs to be. She put down her fork, frustration boiling beneath the surface. All these months, all her time, all her energy, and he treated it as though it was trivial, as though her life had been hollowed out for the sake of convenience. The following days were tense. Elena withdrew emotionally, pretending everything was fine, while Inna, hardly questioning her choices. She began noticing little things she had ignored before. Jonathan asking for favors she hadn't expected, expecting her to rearrange her schedule to suit his whims, subtle reminders that her life was now an accessory to his. One evening, she was cleaning the apartment when she found herself sitting on the couch, knees drawn up. She pulled her phone from her pocket and texted her closest friend, Mia. I'm starting to think I've given everything for nothing. Mia replied almost instantly. What do you mean? Elena typed slowly, thinking, everything I sacrificed, everything I did. He doesn't see me, he sees what I can do for him. There was a long pause before Mia responded. Then maybe it's time to ask him what he really thinks. That night, Elena confronted him. The rain poured outside, droplets tapping against the window, mirroring the tension in the apartment. She stood, facing him, her voice steady despite the storm inside. Jonathan, she said, I need to know something. Do you really appreciate me? Or am I just convenient? He froze, the confident, charming facade faltering for the first time in her presence. What are you talking about? He asked, though his eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. I've given up so much for you, she said, tears welling. My time, my energy, even my brother's needs sometimes. I've sacrificed parts of my life for you, and I don't know if you even see that. Do you? Jonathan looked away, uncharacteristically sigh. Lent. The pause stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. Finally he spoke, but not with reassurance. Elena, I assumed you were happy to be here. I never thought you'd measure your sacrifices in that way. Her heart sank. You assumed? You assumed everything I did was nothing? That it was just part of the package? Yes, he said quietly. I didn't realize it weighed so heavily on you. I thought you did it because you wanted to, not because you felt trapped. The truth hit her harder than any argument could. For all his charm, for all his kindness, Jonathan had never truly considered the cost of her sacrifices. He had taken them for granted, assuming that her love and care were effortless, natural, and abundant. Elena felt a cold resolve settle over her. She had acted selflessly, thinking love meant giving everything. But love without acknowledgement, without genuine understanding, was hollow. I can't keep doing this, she said firmly, sacrificing everything for someone who doesn't see me. Not the person, not the effort, not the choices I've made. I won't do it anymore. Jonathan opened his mouth, searching for words. Elena, no, she interrupted. I need you to hear me. I've given everything because I thought it mattered. But if all you see is the result, the outcome, the perfection, then I've been invisible this whole time, and I refuse to stay invisible. The apartment was silent except for the rain. Jonathan, for the first time, looked uncertain, stripped of the power and confidence that had always defined him. Elena stood tall, realizing that her strength didn't come from her sacrifices. It came from knowing when to demand respect, when to set boundaries, when to reclaim herself. She walked to the door, hand on the knob. She didn't need his apology, his acknowledgement, or his charm. She needed to protect her own life, her own self-worth, and she would do it on her terms. As she stepped out into the rain, leaving the luxurious apartment behind, Elena felt something she hadn't in months: freedom. The weight of invisible sacrifices lifted from her shoulders, and somewhere deep inside, she knew that the next steps, whether Jonathan understood, whether he changed, whether they found a true connection, would no longer dictate her value. She was finally walking for herself. The next morning, Elena woke in her small apartment to sunlight streaming through the cracked blinds. The air smelled faintly of last night's rain, mixed with the lingering scent of her coffee. She felt lighter, almost weightless, as though stepping out of Jonathan's world had lifted a burden she hadn't realized she carried. Her phone buzzed. A message from her brother, Alex. "You okay? You sounded upset yesterday." She smiled faintly, typing back quickly. "I'm fine. Just thinking." For the first time in months, Elena allowed herself to plan her day without Jonathan in mind. She went to the diner for her morning shift, but lingered at the counter before clocking in. She watched customers come and go, noting small details she had once overlooked. How the barista smiled at a regular, how a child tugged at their parent's sleeve, how life carried on in its messy, imperfect way. She realized she had been so focused on Jonathan's world, so focused on pleasing him, that she had forgotten to live in her own. That afternoon she met her friend Mia at a small cafe. "You look different," Mia said immediately. "I feel different," Elena admitted, sipping her tea. "I realized I've been sacrificing everything for someone who never really acknowledged it. And I'm done." Mia nodded, supportive. "That's brave. Most people don't see it until they're completely drained. But what now?" "I'm rebuilding," Elena said, eyes shining. "I need to reclaim my life, my choices, my time, my freedom. If Jonathan wants to be part of my world, he'll have to meet me there, not expect me to disappear into his." Meanwhile, Jonathan was experiencing his own unraveling. When Elena walked out, he had been stunned. For the first time, his control slipped. He hadn't expected her to confront him so boldly. He had assumed love would make her sacrifices invisible, her life bendable to suit his convenience. He hadn't realized that love required acknowledgement, effort, and reciprocity. That night, he sat alone in the apartment he had once shared with her, staring at the empty space where she had been. The realization hit him like a thunderclap. I took her for granted. I assumed her devotion was effortless. I never considered her perspective. Elena, in the days that followed, began reconnecting with her own world. She spent evenings helping her brother with homework, laughing with friends, and even indulging in small luxuries for herself. A new book, a long bath, a quiet evening at the park. She noticed how good it felt to live for herself again. Her thoughts were no longer consumed with pleasing Jonathan or anticipating his moods. She remembered how she had saved her own life, made decisions based on her instincts, and realized that her strength was not in sacrifice but in discernment. Jonathan, meanwhile, tried to contact her. Calls went unanswered, messages remained unopened. For the first time in his life, a person's boundaries weren't flexible. He felt frustration, but deeper than that was a gnawing sense of loss, because he realized that Elena's presence had enriched him in ways no business deal, no achievement, no influence ever could. He sent her one final message. "Elena, I understand now. When you're ready, I want to hear your voice, not your sacrifices, but your thoughts, your feelings, your world." Elena read it, her pulse quickening. She felt a small flicker of something she hadn't felt in weeks, hope. But this time, she was cautious. Any reconciliation would be on her terms, not his assumptions. The turning point came when Elena's employer, noticing her renewed confidence, offered her a promotion, assistant manager. It was a role that came with responsibility, recognition, and more autonomy. She hesitated briefly, considering Jonathan's opinion, but then remembered her own worth. She accepted. When she shared the news with her brother, Alex's eyes lit up. "You did this for you," he said proudly, "not anyone else." "That's amazing." "Yes," Elena said softly. Finally, for me. That weekend she ran into Jonathan unexpectedly at a local market. He looked different, less polished, more human. There was an awkward pause. Neither knew who should speak first. "Hi," he said finally, voice low. "Hi," she replied, cautiously neutral. Jonathan looked around, then back at her. "I've been thinking a lot," he began, "about what you said, about everything. I don't want to assume anything about you ever again. I want to know you, your world, your rules, your limits." Elena studied him, searching for the sincerity she needed. She saw it in his eyes, the first genuine humility, the first acknowledgement that he had been wrong. "I've been thinking too," she said. "I need space, boundaries. I need to know that I'm valued for me, not just my sacrifices." He nodded slowly. "And you are. I promise. I understand now." Over the next few months, their relationship transformed. Elena set boundaries firmly. She refused to overextend herself for his convenience. She maintained her independence, her time with family, and her personal goals. Jonathan learned to respect them, genuinely consulting her, acknowledging her efforts, and treating her as an equal partner, not a servant to his world. The shift was subtle but profound. Elena realized she had gained something far more important than Jonathan's wealth or status. She had regained her self-respect, her confidence, and her voice. Then came the moment that sealed it. Elena had organized a charity event at the diner to support underprivileged youth. Jonathan volunteered, not as the billionaire everyone knew, but as a partner, helping with logistics, running errands, and listening. For the first time, he experienced her world fully, not controlled, not curated, but lived authentically. At the end of the evening, as they packed up, Jonathan took her hand. "I see you now," he said simply. "Not just your sacrifices, not just your strength, the whole you. And I want to be someone who deserves you." Elena smiled, tears in her eyes, not for him, but for herself. "Then show me," she whispered, "every day in ways that matter." Through this experience, Elena learned the power of her own voice. She realized that love, respect, and partnership weren't about endless sacrifice. They were about recognition, reciprocity, and true understanding. Jonathan had been a catalyst, yes, but she had grown because she dared to confront him, to assert her value, and to demand more than assumptions and vague compliments. And as they walked home together, hand in hand, it was clear that this time her choices and her voice would shape the relationship, not blind devotion or silent compromise. Her world had expanded, and this time it was on her terms. The morning after the charity event, Elena woke with a quiet sense of determination. The night had shown her that Jonathan was capable of understanding her world, but understanding wasn't enough. She needed to see that he could truly respect her independence, her limits, and her choices before fully investing again. She brewed her coffee slowly, thinking through the steps she would take. No more blind sacrifices, no more assuming his intentions. She would test him subtly to see if he could rise to the challenge of her life rather than expect her to bend to his. The first test was small but telling. Jonathan had asked if she would attend a high-profile gala with him next week, an event filled with media, investors, and socialites. Previously, Elena would have said yes without hesitation, rearranging her schedule, buying a new dress, even sacrificing sleep. This time she paused. "Jonathan," she said firmly, "I'll come to the gala, but only if I can leave early. I have responsibilities I can't ignore, and I won't compromise them for appearances." He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "Of course, I respect that. You set the terms." That simple acknowledgement, the recognition that she had a say, felt revolutionary to Elena. Next, she tested the balance of effort. For weeks, she had been managing his personal schedule, organizing dinners, handling his errands, essentially molding her life around his need. Elena decided to see how he would respond if she reversed the roles. "Jonathan," she said one evening, "I need help moving a few things in my apartment. Could you come tomorrow?" He blinked, surprised. "You want me to help you?" "Yes," she said calmly. and I'll expect you to follow my instructions, not assume you know better." Jonathan grinned, a little sheepish but willing. The next day he showed up with boxes and brooms in hand, ready to participate. He lifted, carried, and listened to her instructions without complaint, respecting her authority in her own space. Elena felt a subtle thrill of empowerment. For the first time she realized that a relationship wasn't just about giving, it was about mutual contribution and respect. The following week brought another test. Elena's brother, Alex, had been struggling with school, and she had promised him a weekend trip to a local museum exhibit. Previously, she might have canceled for Jonathan's plans without question. Instead, she told him, "I'll attend the gala, but only if the museum trip happens first." Jonathan hesitated, then nodded. "Agreed. We'll go after the exhibit. Your priorities come first." Elena's heart lifted. Each of these tests, small as they were, revealed a pattern. Jonathan was capable of acknowledging her life, her needs, and her limits. It wasn't instant, and he made mistakes, but he was learning, adapting, and most importantly, respecting her decisions, rather than assuming she would compromise endlessly. One evening, as they walked home from the diner, Elena decided it was time for a more direct test. She looked at him serious. "Jonathan, I need to hear something. I've sacrificed, compromised, and adapted to your world for months. I need to know, do you really value me, or do you just expect me to continue?" Jonathan stopped walking, eyes locking with hers. "Elena, I thought I did, but I realize now that I didn't fully understand the extent of what you were giving, or what it meant to you. I see it now. And I want you to know I value you, not your sacrifices, not what you do for me, but you, every part of you, your decisions, your priorities, your independence." Her throat tightened. Finally, the words she had been waiting to hear, the acknowledgement she needed. But Elena wasn't done. She needed proof, not just promises. Over the next few days, she set subtle challenges. She invited friends over without telling him in advance, observing whether he could adapt without resentment. She declined an impromptu weekend getaway he suggested, insisting on prior commitments to her life. She made personal financial decisions without consulting him, testing whether he respected her autonomy. Jonathan met each challenge with patience, humility, and willingness to learn. He adapted, communicated, and never belittled her choices. Each response reinforced the truth Elena had feared she might never hear. He was capable of loving her as an equal, not a subordinate. One afternoon, Ina received a call from her old workplace. They wanted her to return in a higher position, recognizing her skills and reliability. She hesitated, considering Jonathan's plans, but then remembered the boundaries she had established. When she told Jonathan, she braced herself for resistance, for disappointment. Instead, he smiled warmly. "Elena, that's amazing. You should take it. I support you. Always. Your growth, your career, your choices. Never forget that I'm here to support, not control." Tears welled in her eyes. She had tested him, and he had passed. Not because he was perfect, but because he was willing to adapt, to respect, to understand. The defining moment came when Elena fell ill unexpectedly. She had pushed herself too hard between work, family, and personal responsibilities, and a fever forced her to lie in bed for 2 days. Jonathan, rather than stepping in and making decisions for her, asked what she needed, listened carefully, and followed her instructions. He cooked her meals, maintained the apartment, and even helped her with minor errands, but he did it all on her terms. Watching him move so attentively without attempting to dominate or control, Elena realized she had finally reached a point of equilibrium. She could trust him, not blindly, but with measured faith grounded in experience. By the end of the month, Elena felt transformed. Her life was balanced, not dominated by Jonathan, not dominated by sacrifices, but shared. She had learned the most crucial lesson. Love is not about giving everything and expecting acknowledgement. It is about mutual respect, boundaries, and recognition of each other's world. She looked at Jonathan one evening, sitting across from her at the kitchen table, laughing at a shared joke. She realized that she didn't just love him because of who he was. She loved him because he had proven he could respect her entirely, not just her devotion or her sacrifices. "Jonathan," she said softly, reaching across the table to touch his hand, "I finally feel like we're equal in this, not just in presence, but in respect and understanding. That's the only way I can love fully." He squeezed her hand gently. "And that's exactly what I want, to walk this life with you, side by side, not above, not below, but equal." Elena smiled. For the first time in months, she felt complete, empowered, and truly seen. Her sacrifices had taught her her strength, but her boundaries had taught Jonathan how to truly value her. The morning sun filtered through the blinds, casting soft golden light across the apartment. Elena sat at her kitchen table, a notebook open before her. She had spent the early hours planning her week, prioritizing her work, her brother, and herself. For the first time in months, her schedule reflected her choices, not someone else's expectations. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jonathan. "Coffee. I'd like to talk. No expectations, no pressure, just us." Elena stared at the message for a moment, weighing her feelings. She had set boundaries, tested his intentions, and observed his actions. And though trust had been earned slowly, she realized she wanted to see him, not out of obligation, but because she genuinely wanted to share her life with him as an equal. She was ready. At the cafe, Jonathan was waiting. His posture was relaxed, but his eyes betrayed a mixture of anticipation and nervousness. Elena approached, and he rose immediately, smiling. "Morning," he said softly. "Morning," she replied, sliding into the seat across from him. There was a long pause as they both sipped coffee, the air filled with the gentle hum of conversation around them. Finally, Jonathan spoke. "Elena, I know the past months haven't been easy. I realize now how much I expected without acknowledging the cost. I want to fix that." Elena studied him carefully. She had heard apologies before, but this felt different. It wasn't a superficial, convenient apology. It carried reflection, understanding, and humility. "I spent months sacrificing parts of my life, Jonathan," she said. "I did it because I cared, and because I thought that's what love required. But I've learned that love without acknowledgement, respect, and reciprocity isn't love. It's expectation." Jonathan nodded, leaning forward. "You're right. I didn't see it. And I've been wrong to assume your devotion was effortless. I've realized that your choices, your sacrifices, your voice, they matter. You matter." Elena felt a flutter in her chest, not because of flattery, but because she had finally been seen. Over the next hour, they talked, really talked, about their expectations, their fears, their past mistakes. Elena voiced her needs clearly: boundaries, mutual respect, acknowledgement of effort, and the freedom to live her life fully. Jonathan listened, sometimes interrupting to clarify, never to dismiss. "I can do this," he said finally. "I can be someone who values you, your world, your choices, your sacrifices, not just the outcome." She smiled faintly. "I want to believe that, and I want to see it in your actions, not just words." He reached across the table and took her hand. "Then you will." Back at the apartment, Elena returned to her life with renewed vigor. She reinstated routines she had abandoned, dedicated time to her brother, friends, and her own goals. Jonathan supported her fully, adjusting his schedule when necessary, taking advice on tasks rather than issuing directives, and never making her sacrifices seem expected or insignificant. The change was subtle but profound. Elena no longer felt depleted after days with him. She felt invigorated. She realized that the strength she had developed through sacrifice was now balanced with autonomy and mutual respect. One evening, Jonathan suggested a short trip out of the city, an opportunity to relax and reconnect without distractions. Elena hesitated. In the past, she would have agreed immediately, ignoring other responsibilities. This time, she evaluated the situation carefully. "I'll go," she said, "but we need to plan it around my schedule and commitments. I can't just drop everything." Jonathan smiled, genuine warmth in his eyes. "Absolutely. I want this trip to be about both of us, not just me. Your life matters too." Elena felt a thrill of empowerment. For the first time, she realized that she wasn't compromising herself for love. Love was adjusting to her life, not the other way around. During the trip, they spent long hours walking along quiet streets, talking about dreams and fears, sharing meals, and laughing over small, mundane moments. Elena watched Jonathan navigate unfamiliar territory, literally and emotionally, with patience and humility. He deferred decisions to her, listened intently, and acknowledged her input at every turn. At night, under the stars, Elena realized something profound. She hadn't just regained her life, she had transformed their relationship. They were now partners, equal in trust, respect, and understanding. Her sacrifices had taught her her strength, but her boundaries had taught him how to truly love. When they returned home, Elena's brother, Alex, noticed the change immediately. "You're glowing," he said. "And Jonathan? He's different too. He actually listens now." Elena laughed softly. "It's not magic, it's boundaries, respect, mutual understanding, and yes, a lot of patience." Jonathan, overhearing, smiled. "I learned from the best." Elena glanced at H.M., a quiet pride filling her chest. "You learned quickly, but don't forget, I had to teach you through tests." He laughed, genuine and unguarded. "And I'll keep learning, I promise. For you." Months later, Elena reflected on the journey she had endured. She had entered a relationship willing to sacrifice everything, believing that love demanded self-effacement. She had been hurt, taken for granted, and made invisible. But through courage, assertiveness, and carefully measured tests, she had reclaimed her life and reshaped her relationship on equitable terms. Jonathan had proven capable of growth, understanding, and true respect. And Elena had proven to herself that love was never about giving until you disappeared. It was about mutual acknowledgement, shared effort, and unwavering respect. She stood at the window one evening, looking at the city lights. Jonathan joined her, slipping his arm around her shoulders. "You're amazing," he whispered. "I see you now, every part of you." Elena leaned into him, feeling the warmth of true partnership for the first time. "And I'm finally seeing us," she replied. "As equals, not as giver and taker." The rain began to fall softly outside, tapping against the glass. But for Elena, the storm was gone. The sacrifices, the doubts, the pain, they had forged her strength and illuminated the path forward. She had learned to demand respect, to set boundaries, and to value herself. And in doing so, she had discovered a love worth keeping, one that saw her, honored her, and matched her courage with true understanding. Her life had been a series of sacrifices, but now, it was also a life reclaimed, a love reshaped, and a future built on equality. "Thank you." And for the first time in months, Elena smiled, free, empowered, and fully visible to the man she loved, and to herself. More stories will keep coming, so please don't forget to like and subscribe.